Connor, the most requested guest in the history of Validated. And Brennan, welcome back.
Yeah, good to be here again so soon. I'm just Connor's sidekick this time.
Love it.
Newly promoted.
You, I'm not kidding when I say you're the most requested person we've had for an episode of the show in the last probably year, outside of like Michael Saylor or someone like that. So I kind of want to start out a little bit with, who are you?
I'm just a guy. I'm Brennan's son. I happen to work at a place called Temporal. Spend too much time on Twitter.
Yeah, it's a good start. So you guys at Temporal do a whole bunch of interesting stuff. I want to get into that, but like, how did you get into crypto initially? How'd you wind up in this crazy world?
Well, I went to the Bitcoin conference in Miami, and it was really fun. I was like, oh, crypto, you just get a party of rich people, like, sign me up. And then I just I never stopped partying.
Even in the bear market?
Yeah, I mean, those were some fun parties too. The people who shorted had good parties.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So I want to get into a little bit of like what you and Temporal have been building a bit. I want to talk a little bit about kind of the evolving state of transactions on Solana and how things are moving through. There's a new prop AMM that's been making a lot of noise. I hear you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, so the story is, Ben and I were playing chess, and I beat Ben in chess, and I got to name our prop AMM GoonFi.
So what is a prop AMM?
A prop AMM, it's a black box with money in it that runs an algorithm that's actively buying and selling shitcoins from people. But it's like a black box, that's what makes it special. Is like the person who's buying and selling the shitcoins they don't have to reveal like how their thought process is when they're buying and selling. They just do it inside a black box.
So a traditional AMM, right, is just governed by an open source function that it's trying to balance a pool. There's a whole reams and reams of paper on different curves and different ways that's accomplished. Like, what is the goal of a prop AMM relative to like a Uniswap AMM?
Oh, well, also what makes it special is like you can kind of pick and choose. Well, so like on Solana, like Jupiter is like the main aggregator. So like, all right, like most of the flow is like retail normies like Brennan. So they're not like sophisticated and smart. So like they're not trying to like rip you off, right? They're just trying to get their shit coin. So like you can like quote very tight. And yeah, so like, all right, I'm only dealing with like normies. So yeah, you can quote very tight. And I would say like the goal is like for like tighter spreads, and you can do like much more volume on like lower amounts of money, like inventory. Yeah, so like with Uniswap, you need like a lot of money just like sitting there idly to make markets. But with a prop AMM, you can have like pretty, liquid markets with less money, and you can quote tighter. But basically it's just like a black box.
Right. And so because the assumption is because you can't read how it's making decisions, it's less susceptible to manipulation, or you can just have a lot more variables in there about how it responds.
Yeah, like you can kind of just like pick and choose how you do things.
So it brings a certain amount of discretion into the actual AMM process as opposed to treating every order that comes in equally.
Yeah. Like you can like pick and choose what you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting because it feels like for a while we've been trying to fix this on the flow side of things, right? Whether it's like DFlow or whether it's other types of groups that have been looking at like source scoring. But it's all been external to the actual DeFi contract. And this is different because you're actually building that sort of decision-making logic into the program, right? It's not coming from like an external source.
Yeah. And also like the dark AMM, like you're getting your information from like off chain, right? Like,
right.
This is like the price discovery happens in Binance, right? Which is really like in Tokyo, right? So a lot of it is like a game. It's like, how fast can I get the price from Binance to Central EU, like Frankfurt,
Right.
because that's where most of the validators are. Like, how fast can I do that?
And like, I mean, the thing I love about this is that it takes all types, right? And this is why I love chatting with Connor, is because like, you know, we had our own Anza bubble and chatting with Firedancer and others. Like, how do we solve this problem? How do we make spreads tight? People want tight spreads and deep liquidity and all these good things. And like, you know, we have a tendency to get nerd sniped and like, okay, here comes a 2-year execution roadmap of all these things we need to go build that makes it perfect. And it's like, okay, it's nice to think about that and start building some of those things. And then you chat with people like Connor who are like, oh, let's just go build a black box and like actually tag these things. And we just know who some of these entities are. And we start, building the heuristic on informed versus uninformed flow. And like, boom, it's here. And I mean, it didn't take that long. And there's a ton of money to be made by building that thing. So it's cool. I mean, you need to like come down from the clouds in the ivory tower to be like, what's actually happening on chain? And I love chatting with these guys that are actually in the trenches building stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I was talking with Max at Anza. This sort of came up because I mentioned that, hey, like, you know, we're doing a lot of work with BAM. We're doing a lot of work with multiple concurrent leaders. It's all about being able to make DeFi on-chain better, but we do have folks quoting like half a basis point nowadays. Like, what do we need all these big changes for? And I think his answer was really kind of telling because it is exactly this dichotomy that you two are talking about, where it's like, well, they're doing a bunch of things that effectively prioritize cancels by making them really cheap. Like they rewrote a bunch of stuff in an extremely efficient language, or not language, program language with like Pinocchio. And that is part of why they're able to quote so tight. And part of me is like, okay, so do we have to do anything? Or do people just need to write better code? And the answer is yes to both of those, but it's interesting to come at it from such different angles. What do you think is like, as you kind of look forward, like what does Solana have to fix on its core versus like what do developers on Solana just need to fix in the way they're thinking about writing applications?
I don't want to get in trouble.
We're all friends here.
No, but we have enemies on chain. What do you think? You're the Anza guy, Brennan. I'll let you go first. I'll piggyback off him.
Nice sidestep. Yeah, I mean, I think there are things that we need to fix on chain, and it's a question of priorities. We want to go build the perfect decentralized NASDAQ, and I mean, I think we've all seen the internet capital markets vision from Max and lots of folks. Austin, I think you were part of that as well.
Yeah.
And so we've got that big glorious vision, but it's like it's pretty important to not lose sight of today and winning the experience today. And that's where it's cool to have a lot of people attacking different timelines because we have a big execution roadmap ahead of us. And I think we all kind of want similar things in the end. We want decentralization. We want censorship resistance. And it's kind of a question of like, how do we get there? And so like, I mean, we like a diversity of builders and landing strategies. I think it's healthy. It makes us all better. And like, I'm also sick of hearing people like using decentralization as a crutch for building junk. Like people always talk about it. Oh, like decentralization is an obstacle to overcome. And I hate that. Like it certainly is more complex to reason about. It's easier to reason about like a centralized system, but there are like big shortcomings of those systems. And I think that you can actually like flip the narrative a little bit if you build some cool stuff and turn it into a strength. It's like,
sure.
Like you don't hear of decentralization with AWS in a negative. It's like availability zones and it's an upcharge that you get for, like having data.
They literally charge you more for decentralization.
Yeah, exactly. So you have those things. And then we also like to think of like speed of getting stuff on chain. And I mean, it's hard to overcome the speed of light. You can try and optimize for the speed of light and, Double Zero is doing a lot of awesome, cool stuff there. But it's hard to get over that. But like, you can do neat tricks. Like you don't necessarily need full finalization to get gains along the way. And so just confirmation of landing transactions in block in proximity to where, news is happening or events are happening that impact prices is also valuable. Even though it's not fully confirmed, probabilistically I can say, well, but it's been consumed by a leader. It's been put in a block that's been broadcast out. I can have some assurances there. So Anyways, I'm getting a little off topic here, but yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff to go build.
Yeah, I think decentralization is like I don't even know what it means. I don't even care what it means. I like the word permissionless more. It's like no one can tell me what to do. Um, rules are meant to be broken. That's why I feel like, we need these like adverse characters on Solana. I won't say their names, but everyone knows who they are. At least people in the trenches. They're really good at just like bending the systems and breaking them. But what it does is it highlights the weaknesses.
So when you think about like the challenges in the real world that you guys face operating these types of systems versus the type of challenges that you hear like at a core dev meetup or something like that, like how far apart do you think the sort of the two camps are in terms of thinking about problems and solutions? And like, because it seems a lot of the times what happens is stuff comes out of sort of, and like this is much more of a problem in Ethereum than it is in Solana, but it's still a problem in Solana where like things will come out of theory and not much seems to come out of practice in terms of informing roadmaps.
Yeah. Like for example, the other day we had like a cable get cut, right? And then we have to start routing traffic in like an inefficient thing. Like that's not something that I don't think like these systems break. I mean, wires get cut. Yeah, I'm curious to hear about like 00. Like how many times have you guys had wires get cut?
In our testnet, we have had systems go down for unscheduled maintenance, like I think twice over the course of the testnet. So it happens multiple times a year. I mean, there was a whole period where everyone's skip rate in Tokyo went up. And it was like, oh, is there a bug in the new client? Like, was there something weird? Because it coincided, right, with one of the like the minor updates in Agave. And it was like, oh, did we trigger a bug or something? It was like, actually, no, like a cable that didn't even go down unexpectedly. It was going down for scheduled maintenance. And so in some ways, everyone should have known that like, hey, Tokyo latency is about to get a lot worse. But no one thinks about these types of things when they're building software. They're focused on the software. They're not focused on the physical infrastructure. And we've kind of been able to, I would say we've been able to like glide for a long time in crypto, not having to think about like the connectivity layer. We just like Turbine is beautiful, but Turbine is also like the last thing a network engineer would ever build because it's not geographically aware. And so that means it's not latency aware or bandwidth aware. It's just stake aware. And so it works perfectly in a mathematical model of a computer, but that mathematical model of a computer doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the actual Solana network.
Yeah, like something fun to talk about, like with this, is like, all right, like we kind of expect these hardware providers to be online. Like something, a lot of people keep talking about lately is like, slot lagging and people are missing slots, stuff like that. Like, you can't plan for like slot lagging in a thing. And, also something I think is kind of stupid is that everyone was trying to cancel these slot laggers. But like, obviously they weren't on ETH because the same thing happened on ETH. And Kiln was the biggest slot lagger, and they just got more stake, right? Like it was like a inverse thing. Like people thought they could use like the social layer to like cancel people, and what it did is it made slot laggers move all their stake to anonymous validators, and then they just got more stake because stakers wanted more money, right? You can't like think about these things when you're, super high level trying to write a white paper. Like this is like real world shit.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny because it goes both directions. Like Austin, if I understood what you were saying initially, it was kind of the, hey, are we letting the practical sort of inform the theory and the roadmap and like execution priorities and things like that? And we certainly see that, like, get surprised by the way that people are using the chain and things like that, and need to react quickly. But we've seen it go the other way as well, where like we had a bunch of these theoretical conversations back in Singapore, like the slot lagging was one of them. And oftentimes people go, yeah, okay, that's nice, but is this really a problem yet? Okay, well, no.
Yeah.
And then it's funny when they actually start happening, we go, oh, shoot, okay, people have figured out this maybe weak point, and now, okay, thank God we have this solution in our back pocket that we can roll out to try and help mitigate some of this stuff. So I've definitely seen it go both ways. And I mean, at the end of the day, everyone needs to prioritize, like, what are we going to execute on first? What's most important? You got to make tough calls. And it's really nice when you're right, but occasionally we're wrong, and then you need to be able to adapt quickly.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, what did you like? How do you think through this like, so things on chain move very quickly, right? We can go from the chain working perfectly fine to or launching and ruining everyone's day or a few weeks. And like these things move very quickly. So when you're thinking about planning, like, let's not call it a roadmap, but a series of things to work on over the next 6 months, like how much are things that happen on chain breaking in and throwing the plans out at Anza versus like how much you guys like, look, we've got this thing we're doing, like we think on-chain activity is important, but maybe we're not dropping everything to respond to new situations that come up.
Yeah, this is where it's really nice to have Trent. Because I think a lot of people are just so reactionary and here's a new thing, oh my gosh, scramble. And Trent's like, no, we are not shipping this thing. We are not risking the liveness of the chain to like instantly react to this, flavor of the week. Focus on the IBRL mission. Hey, what's got like general good utility versus, shrink wrapping around this one specific use case that's popular. And so, yeah, shout out Trent. He's awesome and a great counterbalance.
He's in the trenches.
All right, he passes the trench test. So yeah, he's good with me. He's good with Connor. He must be good people.
He created the trenches.
Yeah,
he's a Discord mod.
It's true.
Yeah, and so, but I mean, you need some of it, and so it's good to have a healthy balance. And this is where I think people love watching the like public feuds between Tolly and Trent on X, and
sure,
and like I mean, I think it's awesome that Tolly is in there and like he's like an idea machine. But can be a little bit reactionary, I think, on, okay, hey, we need to solve this problem, like, which is great. Like, he feels great ownership and stewardship over the chain and, like, wants to make sure, okay, like, we need to think about this. How are we solving this use case?
Yeah.
But then you need the Trents to counterbalance and be, slow the roll and figure out, okay, what's the right way to do this? We can't jeopardize everything else just to solve this one, point problem.
Yep. That's fair.
Shout out Trent. You should have him on here.
We tried. So, I guess, Connor, what are things that are top of mind for you in terms of like on-chain performance? I mean, like, so we've seen a lot change in the last, let's call it like 6 months. I think MEV has maybe changed in some pretty fundamental ways. Like, what have you been seeing as someone who's actually building the stuff on chain?
I mean, like, so shout out Ghost. Extremely underappreciated by the Solana community. Every time they drop a dashboard, the chain literally changes. Like, can't say enough things about Ghost. Like, they deserve to be getting paid millions by Solana Foundation because they literally change the chain every time they drop a dashboard. It's crazy. So they dropped their sandwiching dashboard, and it made people realize, oh wait, like sandwiching actually exists. It's not something that's not real. And it like kind of exposed like how sandwiching is actually happening in like the different ways. So like, I mean, there are some people like who are just like blatantly like sandwiching on their leader slots, like max extracting like 50-60% of their transactions were just like sandwiches. They were like all bundles, like atomic sandwiches. Like obviously like a lot of that was like people with Marinade stake, but also people with Jito stake too. It's like Marinade was just trying to like, and the Solana Foundation, like that's the thing, like these stake pools are just like rotten apples. Like stake pools need to fundamentally change. Not the 00 stake pool. Shout out to 00 Enforcer, Austin. Like a KYC stake pool is pretty good. Like Sybils a lot. Like that's where a lot of these, these Sybils are just like, yeah, really bad for the chain and they need to change. Because it's like, oh, like it might be X amount of validators in a stake pool, but like how many operators is there? Like that's the actual real question. Like people don't know the answer. So yeah, and then like, so there's like a lot and just like blatant sandwiching on leader slots, but then Ghost dropped the dashboard and like people like Jito and Marinade actually like started getting canceled on the timeline and started doing things about it. All because of the Ghost dashboard. Like shout out Ghost again. And then what we're seeing right now is there's a lot of like wide sandwiching. Yeah. And then also like the way like order flow is being obtained. So like used to be like the best way to get order flow is like from the TPU, when you're like a sending a transaction, you send to this validator and the next 10 validators, you send straight to your TPU.
Yep.
And like that was a great way to get like unprocessed transactions. I mean, it still is, but like the game, like but like when you're a leader, like you just got this transaction, but you don't know what other leaders also got that same transaction too, right? So you're like kind of in the dark. Like you have this information, but you don't know who else has this information, right?
Yeah.
But then like what we're starting to see is like a lot of people have these transaction landing services. Like, I mean, I'm seeing everyone launch one now. Like Sanctum has one, Helios has one, we have one, like a lot of people have one. It's like it's the meta, right?
Yeah.
But like that's an even better way to get order flow, because now you know, all right, they could be sending with like durable nonces, so they could send multiple people at the same time, but you know who else they're sending to, or they could be sending it through just you first. So you know, all right, I'm the only one who's seeing this unprocessed transaction before anyone else, before it even hits a single validator TPU. I can even control which TPUs it's being sent to, right? So like that's happening right now. And like there's like, shout out Ghost again, like their dashboard. It showed atomic sandwiching, but what's happening right now is like a lot of like wide sandwiching, which is like, like statistical arbitrage, where you're like sandwiching, but it's not atomic. But it's easier to like wide sandwich on like lower volume shitcoins, because like what fucks up a wide sandwich is like if someone else like gets transactions in between your transactions and the target transaction, it could cause you to lose money. So it's easier to wide sandwich on like coins with like less volume. Like, I mean, there's sandwiches happening like between like multiple blocks, right? Like it could be like a 3-block sandwich. Like there's the buy transaction, the victim transaction, and the sell transaction, all in 3 different blocks, right? So that, yeah.
Yeah, I guess at what point does that stop being a sandwich and just become trading?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question I don't know. I mean, it's like very like theoretical. I don't think there is like a...
Yeah, I guess like we sort of think of like an optimistic sandwich attack is one where you're just hoping nothing happens in between, right?
Yes.
Like, and that's kind of what we're talking about here, where it's like there could be 2,000 things that happen on that particular pool between block 1 and block 3, where there's, a whole bunch of other transactions being put in. And at some point, like, I'm not sure that is conceptually that different from someone just taking a hedge position on a market movement. And it gets really interesting that we like at what point did these things stop being sandwiches, or how long of a definition do we have to extend a sandwich for?
There's no good answer that I've come up with.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just think it matters a lot for like terminology, because like sandwiching, people know of sandwiching as like, this is a bad thing that people do, right? And like dark pools in TradFi got a very bad reputation, even though they do provide price improvement in a lot of situations. I don't know, Brandon, I'm guessing you guys have thought a bunch about this at Anza.
Yeah, a little bit. And I kind of go like, you start distilling a lot of this stuff down, and then you go, wait, what is a market maker? What is a sandwicher? What is an, arbitrager? And you're like, okay, I don't think anyone's in this game to lose money, but there's clearly toxic stuff versus more, hey, this is an appropriate fee for the business service that you're providing. And so it's, it's like one big spectrum. And at Anza, I mean, we're obviously more engineering leaning in how we think about these things, and like a bit too academic at times, I would say. And so I think like the knee-jerk reaction you see from a lot of our engineers or, thinkers is, oh, like we can just IBRL our way out of everything. And
Shout out Alessandro.
Yeah. Right. Shout out Alessandro. We're doing all the shout outs today, getting on all the cap tables. But yeah, like, and IBRL is great. I think it does solve a lot of problems. And so I think like when we start getting too boutiquey with the solutions and like hurting performance, like, okay, we might be going off the rails a little bit, but it also doesn't solve everything. So we need to acknowledge that like hot state is valuable. It will continue to get auctioned off, like regardless of the IBRL stuff that we do. And so like, what do we want that to look like? How can we also solve the hot state problem in a way that's not like parasitic to the chain or, hugely detrimental to users? And that's where you start getting the more exotic, crazy execution stuff. Like me as the guy who takes a lot of arrows when the execution isn't going well, I kind of go, gosh, I hate these things. but I also understand why they're necessary at times. And then you get, some of this censorship resistance and async execution and multidimensional fees, and like, it snowballs into a ton of work, but it's like, okay, we need to solve all of these problems.
I am kind of curious though, like, as you guys think of like the future of Solana is such an amorphous topic, it's almost not worth talking about, but like in a practical sense, how far are we away from what you think of as probably optimal market structure that is actually achievable on a network like Solana, where we have to deal with permissionless actors, we have to deal with, anyone being able to do anything at any time?
I think this dark AMM stuff is like pretty fun. I think some things need to be fixed on like the router side of things, but I think those can happen a lot faster than people expect. I think, fixing the router, like a fully on-chain router, is probably the next like logical step. I don't think it's as far away as people probably imagine.
Brendan, what do you think?
Yeah, there's definitely some stuff that we have to go build. I'm really looking forward to our 100 million CUs. I look forward to the future where people don't have to think about CUs anymore. And so right now, like 60 million was a nice bump. I think there's like often times where we have extra block space that's not utilized. And so, hey, we'll go fill that up. There'll be, some induced demand and things like that. But definitely, 6:30 a.m. on the West Coast, like markets open, like you're getting slammed. And so I want to see how much block space do we need to go build to go absorb all of that demand to where people don't have to think about CUs anymore. So, okay, let's go IBRL even harder, which is happening like super fast. I know Anatoly's always talking about, hey, 20% increases every release, just, made up number. But like that is kind of how things have been trending so far, which is pretty cool. So that's one. And then I think there's a bunch of stuff. I think the single leader model is kind of a problem. You inherently get a monopoly for your 1.6 seconds, which, hey, it's short enough that it's not like,
a lot can happen in 1.6 seconds.
Very true. Yes. And so we need to go fix that. And like part of it would be, we've thought, there's MCP, of course, where we can, bring multiple leaders in and that helps. But there's other stuff we can do in the meantime. Like, should we shrink the leader span from 4 slots to 2? As we fixed a bunch of the replay and like networking problems, shout out 00, like we can get away with that stuff a little more. So can we make it 2 slots and can we make it 300 millisecond slots? And now all of a sudden it's not 1.6, it's like 600. A lot can happen in 600 milliseconds, but it's certainly shorter than 1.6.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess the way I would think about that is like, what do we gain by rotating more quickly? And I think the answer is dictators are dictators for less amount of time, right? Which sort of, you can think about this as creating 2 problems, right? Because one of them, let's go back to political science. The 2 learnings from like the last 20 years of politics that I think are most interesting looking at US politics is term limits had the effect of putting lobbyists in greater control, and getting rid of earmarks meant that all of the, museum of the marmot that gets snuck into like a bill for like some small town in Alaska, like actually did like enable government to keep going and flowing. And so, when we look at these types of things and say, okay, maybe it would be better if validators are building fewer blocks at a time. Instead of 4, we go back to 2. The question is like, what are the good externalities we're getting rid of when we deal with that? And you can look at things like, optimistic sandwiching is the bad side of it, but the flip side of that is like, do we get less efficient market makers because suddenly they have like greater latency between when they're getting state updates? Because if the leader's rotating more often, in some ways the market gets harder to predict, which might be a feature and not a bug, but I always think these externalities are like interesting to consider in the process.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think one of the big things that we consider with this is like the last thing we want to do is promote geographic centralization and, even more, validators in Frankfurt and stuff. Like we need Tokyo to be viable too. And so that's one fear is like you're amortizing these costs less and you get kind of less in your span. And so does that kind of shrink some of your incentives to be geographically decentralized? And we don't want to do that. So there's always a counterbalance.
Yeah, I mean, it'll probably be like a shift in powers. Like like you said, it'll be harder for people to get information as fast. But for the people who are really good at getting that information fast, like who are everywhere, like they'll become even more powerful. I don't know. Let's
Yeah.
break some shit.
Yeah, this is where like multiple concurrent leaders gets me really excited, because if you think about it, like what exists today, like a single sequencer is a hyperlocal market, right? It's local to one computer in one data center. The New York Stock Exchange is hyperlocal to one corner of one data center in New Jersey. Like you start to move basically, like the Solana network, you could say, is a regional market nowadays, centralized to, let's call it, a few countries in Central Europe, right? But like, as you said, if we start to expand, like Tokyo becomes super viable again, Chicago, New York, we start sort of expanding that like gravity well of stake, for lack of a better term, the market effectively expands too. And this is the cool thing about multiple concurrent leaders, is you potentially get local markets that roll up in the same state to global markets. And there's this really kind of funny thing where like, oh, is this the roll-up centric roadmap we've all been looking for? But instead of fractured state, it's literally just markets being able to respond to local conditions, but then that all exists in one state, which is the Solana network, or whatever network is doing this thing with multiple leaders. To me, that's where stuff gets very interesting. But like Connor, like I'm kind of curious if you're just like, that's all crap. Like that won't work in practice, or in practice it'll be in a totally different shape.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what's gonna happen. I think a lot of shit's gonna break, and it doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. But yeah, I don't know. Like no one could predict the stuff that's happening right now. It's like, I don't know, like if you don't think about MEV before you create your blockchain, you're gonna run into a lot of problems. I think that's what's happening with Solana right now. Is like, I don't think MEV was even an idea really in like 2018. Like totally certainly wasn't thinking about it. And now, like with all this volume, like MEV is very real. Like you don't think about like these order flow games, and like you don't think about this stuff, right? Until you have to think about it. And I think Solana is at a point right now where these things, like, they're very real, and you have to think about them. Like at the end of the day, the people who have the most power on the network are the people that control the UI, who have the pretty charts. Those are the most powerful people on Solana, right? It's not like they have more of a monopoly than the validator for 1.6 seconds.
Shout out to Blockworks.
Wait, why shout out Blockworks?
They have charts.
Oh yeah. Well, I was thinking more like Axiom and like Photon. Like they got pretty good charts. Yeah.
Do you think? Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think we need different technology for price discovery to actually return to chain? Like, are clubs really all they're made out to be if price discovery is originating?
We just need like prettier UIs, and so people don't want to trade on decentralized exchanges. Like, I mean, that's the real way to get.
I don't think people trade on centralized exchanges for the UI. Do you?
I mean, well, no. Well, I mean, maybe UX is better letters here.
Like the API you can hit up and you can have fairly deterministic fills.
Yeah. There's just more black boxes with centralized exchanges.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been the second weirdest episode of Validated.